Patricia Gibson to move the motion.
I beg to move, Mr Chair. I wish to move that this House considers mobile phone charges. Having a mobile phone today has pretty much become a necessity to all of us. And even though we may often wish we didn't, we rely on them all to a certain extent. It's just the modern way that we live our lives. And I'm sure, like me, the Minister is deeply concerned to hear about the report from Citizens Advice that too many loyal mobile phone customers are being ripped off by their providers. And I use the term advisedly, Mr Chair, ripped off by their providers. Indeed, the research carried out by Citizens Advice showed that on average, people buying a phone through their contract pay around £22 a month towards their mobile phone handset. We know that many people take out a mobile phone contract with the cost of the new handset included in the overall price of the fixed-term deal, the majority of which are paid over the period of 2 years. At the end of the fixed-term deal, consumers have the option to stay with their network on the same contract, take out a new contract, or move to another provider altogether. However, it seems that 36% of mobile handset customers stay on their previous contract after the 24-month fixed period. On average, people stay on their contract for an extra 7 months. However, the chances are that if you're a customer with one of the bigger mobile phone providers who dominate the market, the price consumers are charged each month will not change, meaning that consumers continue to be charged for their handsets even though they have already paid for them over the course of their 2-year contract. The fact is, Mr Chair, that most providers don't tell the customer how much of their monthly bill goes towards their mobile phone handset and how much is paying for data and calls.
Order. The sitting is suspended for 15 minutes for division in the House, or an additional 10 minutes for each subsequent division. Order, order.
Mr Chair, as I was saying before the division bell sounded, the fact is that most providers do not tell the customer how much of their monthly bill goes towards the mobile handset and how much is paying for their calls and data. Citizens Advice has discovered that 3 of the 4 largest mobile providers continue to charge customers for a handset after the cost of the handset has already been paid during the term of the fixed deal. So that means that loyal customers who choose to stay on the same phone plan after their fixed deal ends see no reduction in their bills. They continue to pay unwittingly for a handset that they have already paid for. And who, Mr Chair, is most likely to be caught up in this so-called loyalty trap? Well, those aged over 65 are most likely to be stung, with 23% of over 65s with a handset-inclusive mobile phone contract staying in their contract for over 12 months past the end of their fixed deal period, compared with only 13% of people aged under 65. And worse still, if you don't switch, you cannot tell how much your handset is actually costing you, so you can't tell if you're getting a good deal or not. Indeed, the total cost of a handset as part of a bundled contract can vary considerably, even when plans are offered by the same provider. In some cases, the price difference can be as much as £400. Indeed, out of 706 bundled contracts analysed by Citizens Advice, 74% were more expensive than buying the same handset up front and using it with a SIM contract only. Now, that's quite astonishing. 3, one of the largest mobile phone providers, have been in touch with me, and that company recognises that the way the market is organised at the moment does indeed mean that mobile bills are lacking in transparency and are difficult for customers to comprehend, which in turn leads to consumers paying more than they should, more than they need to for their mobile phones. I will indeed.
Thank the Honourable for giving way and congratulate her on bringing this issue, which is an issue in my constituency and indeed for all constituencies. Mr Honourable, would the Honourable Lady agree that the thirst for the latest phones see many people buying themselves out of a contract at a massive financial cost, and that we should look into the way, and maybe the Minister needs to do that, in which the industry works out the buyout clause for contracts, and whether this can be fairly lessened in any way and not to the advantage of the mobile companies?
Indeed, I think there's a whole range of issues around mobile phone contracts, but the real concern is when a consumer is paying for something for which they have already paid. But the honourable gentleman is absolutely right. The whole discussion around mobile contracts really needs seriously to be looked at. The answer for transparency for the consumer lies in separating out costs so that consumers can see clearly exactly what they're paying for. In any other industry, Mr Chair, that wouldn't be controversial. Some have pointed out that an obstacle in the way of separating out those costs is that current regulations would require that the mobile phone companies become a regulated creditor under the Financial Conduct Authority, which, it is argued by some, would be bureaucratic, burdensome and complex for the mobile phone companies as they seek to comply with the Consumer Credit Act. However, this need not be the case, since there is a well-established precedence of which the Minister, I'm sure, is aware. There's a well-established precedence for exemptions to be given from full regulation under the Consumer Credit Act for appropriate sectors, especially for 0% APR loans. The Financial Services and Markets Act of 2000 created an exemption from the Consumer Credit Act regulations for providers of 0% APR on loans of up to 4 months. And this was raised to 12 months, which is the current limit in 2015, through a statutory instrument in order to allow insurance companies to offer monthly payments for annual plans. So perhaps the Minister can today consider raising this limit further to 24 months to allow mobile phone operators to offer separate mobile handset financing, making bills more transparent for consumers, since handset and service contracts would then be separated. Given that it would be prohibitively expensive to ask consumers to pay off their handsets in 12 months, raising the current 12-month limit to 24 months exemption in the Consumer Credit Act would offer a logical, a sensible way forward. And I would draw the Minister's attention to the fact that this has been done very successfully in both Australia and Canada, as well as other countries, so there's no reason why it couldn't be done here. Alternatively, O2 has told me that it is the only operator to separate the costs of their mobile phones from the airtime on consumer bills, and that when a consumer has paid off his or her mobile phone, all charges for it are stopped. Now, I'm sure it has to be wondered at why one such company can manage this transparency in its billing, but others don't seem to be able to, and I'm sure that the Minister is wondering that as well. The fact is, we need to make it as easy as possible for those companies who engage in this blatant, unfair and unjust overcharging of customers to stop doing so, to remove all the so-called obstacles and hiding places. In no other industry would such blatant ripping off of the customer be tolerated. It shouldn't be tolerated in the mobile phone industry either. Indeed, it undermines consumer confidence and trust in the entire industry, which is unfair to those players in the industry who play fair by the consumer. The issue is that too many consumers in too many sectors endure a loyalty penalty, and mobile phone charges are symptomatic of a wider problem. Indeed, in the wider telecoms market as a whole, there is a persistent and ingrained level of detriment that people experience. Indeed, we should all be very grateful to the sterling work of Citizens Advice, and I pay tribute to them today, since its research has uncovered the fact that people experience 27 million problems with their mobile, broadband or TV services per year. And these problems cost people £4.2 billion a year in wasted time and money, and this simply is not good enough. Currently, as the Minister will be very aware, we have very powerful voices in the telecoms industry, with no independent voice speaking up for consumers. The fact is that the telecoms industry has vast resources to expend lobbying the regulator, and it's time for the consumer's voice to be heard. Now, I know that the Minister will be very aware of the fact that the UK Government in 2017 in its manifesto made a commitment to make telecoms billings fairer and easier to understand for consumers, including clarifying when the cost of a mobile handset has been paid off by the customer. This isn't difficult to do. It can be done, as I've said, by statutory instrument. In a letter to me on this very issue, the former Minister of State for Digital told me on the 17th of November that he, and I quote, and I have the letter here, he hopes that providers will now take the initiative by clearly separating the cost of handset and tariff in mobile contracts. Similarly, Ofcom responded to me by saying on the 8th of November that it wanted to help people to, quote, shop around and secure the right deals. But the fact is, and the Minister will be very aware of this, the fact is that unless costs are separated out, unless mobile operators are forced down this path, consumers cannot and will not know what deals are the best value for money. We cannot rely on the goodwill of the mobile phone operators because it has not worked. Action is needed, and I have offered a way forward which I urge the Minister to accept. And I think the responses from the former Minister of State for Digital and Ofcom, while well-meaning, really don't go far enough. In fact, these responses give me a cause of concern, really. I'm a bit alarmed because they both, in their own different ways, suggest that the mobile phone companies can decide if and when they take action on this matter. The government and the regulator, I would argue, must act urgently to protect consumers from being ripped off. When you unwittingly pay for the same product twice, make no mistake, you are being ripped off. With inflation running high, and it has done for a number of years, with a continuing squeeze on living standards, it is only right and proper that consumers are treated fairly and are able to see more easily for what they are paying so that they can properly compare prices. And I urge the Minister today, and I've got a real ask for the Minister today, to set out a clear timetable to implement what she and her government have publicly said they believe. This can be done very soon, and it can be done very cleanly and very quickly by statutory instrument. This is needed so there can be no excuse or hiding place for mobile companies who continue to charge mobile phone customers for something that they have already paid for. It is time to redress the imbalance between the powerful voice of the industry and the weak and too often ignored voice of the consumer. It really is time to act.